I'm glad you're back. You're on Growth Factor, my show, and you're looking at Robin Meyerson. She's in Arizona. She has just an incredible miracle story. She has so many. We're going to get right into her miracle story and then take a little pause. I'm going to tell you about all the good works and all the books that Robin has. But if you can just start, Robin, tell us what it's like to be a mother and a grandmother, and then we'll get into your miracle story.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I never even thought about becoming a mother or, gosh, a grandmother when I was in college and my master's, getting my master's. I just was never really part of my world. I just was so career oriented and just so me oriented, not other oriented. And then I met my husband when I was 19, and he's like, I want to have a big family. And I'm like, what? No, all those diapers, all those, all I could see was the negative. I couldn't see the positive at all. And then I'm like, I was very, I was, I'll just tell you what I said to him. I said, what? You just want to marry me for my uterus? Like, that's just, that's totally what I said to him. It was just so mean. Um, and then I just softened up a little bit. And of course, I loved him and I wanted to get married. So we got married. But yet I was still like so career oriented. And I'm like, I'm not having any kids till I travel the world. And I had a red sports car convertible. And I just like, I had to be me. I had to do me. And then I was turning 29, 30. I was 29, and one of my dear friends passed away. And I thought, oh my gosh, she was so young. And I'm like, what's life all about? Like, is it about my red sports car? Is it about my work and all the awards and the resume? What's life all about? It really made me think. And I thought, gosh, I'm going to be 30. Maybe I should have a kid because my friend had just died and she was really young. So boom, at 29, I got pregnant. And I was just so nauseous the whole time. I hated the whole thing. I hated it. I hated it. I was just so, ugh. And I had my daughter and it was wonderful, but it was a very difficult pregnancy, a difficult delivery. And I'm like, I'm never doing this again. Never, ever, ever doing this again. I said, I'm giving my kid to you, to my husband. You take care of it. That's what I said. You take care of it, the child. I was just like, oh, I'm so glad I changed. Um, so fast forward about 2.5 years later, God does these wild things to your mind and your heart. Thank God he does these things. And I softened up and I'm like, gosh, I want another baby. I can't imagine my child just being alone. I want another child. And so 2.5 years later, I got pregnant with my next child. And I'll explain the next portion after the next question.
Okay, so the next question was, I wrote this down because I wanted to know a little bit more about Western and Jewish views on family.
Okay, so you see, as I can tell you with what I just shared, is that I was very, very Western. There's nothing wrong with Western values at all, but I didn't know any Jewish views on family at the time. I didn't realize, the joy and the benefit and the purpose of being, the Torah values, the Jewish values is to get married, to have children if you can, God willing, and to build a Jewish home. And there's so much pleasure and it's hard work, but the more you work at it, the more pleasure you get. And I didn't understand that. And I had to kind of go through it and go through some of these miracles to come to the realization that there's a difference. There's a difference between Western values and Jewish values when it comes to family. I was living very secular Western values where it was very much me oriented. What do I want with my career? And when there's nothing wrong with career, I have a career, but I was a little bit too off balance. Yeah, you want to have harmony and balance with your career and your family as best as you can. And really, God comes first, then your spouse, then your family. And I had it all wrong. I was like, me first, all the way, and no kids, and none of that. So Torah values are family, family dinners, family get-togethers, family holidays. If you look at all of the holidays we have, it's just days and days and days of holidays. We have more holidays than any religion there is. Okay. Every week we have a holiday and it's called Shabbat, and you're with your family. And those are strong Jewish values. And it's the family, the Jewish family, that has maintained itself for 3,000 years. What other nation on earth is there that is together after 3,000 years? It's the Jewish family that's still together after 3,000 years.
So you said the word Shabbat, or maybe you meant Shabbos too. Some people say, what does that mean in English? And what's the
Oh, so it's wild if you think about it. There's 7 days in the week. Well, who invented that? Why do the Chinese have 7 days? Why do the Indians have 7 days? Why do Americans have 7 days? Why do the British have 7 days? Why are there 7 days? Well, because originally, if you go way, way back to the beginning of time, when Jewish values say that there was the first man and his name was Adam, and he had a wife named Hava, or Eve, Adam and Eve. And God said, 6 days, work, 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 do whatever you need to do to work, grow food, make paintings, do whatever you need to do, work the land. But on the seventh day, you rest. And that's called Shabbat or Shabbos, depending on where you live. And that's how the world was designed since the beginning, for all people across the whole world. So and we still have the 7-day work week, right? So if you think about, why don't we have a 10-day work week? Why don't we have an 8-day work week? We have a 7-day week because that's the way God designed it. And so on the seventh day, we rest. And what rest means is different to different people, but it means being with family, being with God, and taking a time out. It's a spa for the soul. A spa for the soul to just chill, no laundry, no nails, no, just being with friends and family and God.
what I think is such a miracle is the word Shabbos, Shabbat, or the Sabbath in English, is that the world knows about it, doesn't necessarily observe it. And I think when you have something higher than yourself, call it God, Hashem, the light, energy, whatever you want to call this entity, something told you take a day of rest, because we see those who don't observe it by commandment, usually their cell phones on all the time, their computer, their TV. And we're starting to see, if you have children or grandchildren, it never ends. So when does it end? When you're commanded by something that says you need to stop Friday night at sundown till Saturday at sundown. That seems to be the only cure for the technology addiction. I want to ask you about there's the miracle of the Sabbath, and then tie that into your family. There's a miracle of your son, Rory. Can you tell us the miracle medical story?
Yeah. So as I said, I had my first child when I was 30, and then just chemically and biologically and just emotionally, I wanted another child. So I got pregnant, thank goodness, thank God. And I was 32. And I was just going for a routine checkup at the doctor. And, still very naive as far as, like, what kind of tests are required and not required. I just kind of like followed what the doctor told me to do, because the doctors knew what to do to take care of me and the baby. So I had a routine test. It was a blood test called the alpha fetal protein test, AFP, and came back and it said it was positive. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And she goes, well, you need to come in for a personal meeting. I'm like, oh my goodness, that sounded really scary. So my husband and I went in, and the doctor sat us down and they said, your child is showing signs of Down syndrome. And I'm like, what's Down syndrome? And they said, well, we can't really tell you everything. The next step is for you to go meet with genetic counseling. So all of a sudden, we had my life completely changed. Here I was, pregnant and nauseous, but excited. And all of a sudden, my schedule had to change to going to different doctors for different advice. And my husband and I went and we sat with the genetic counselor, and they were giving us all these terms. We didn't understand what they were talking about. And my husband's a scientist. And he's like, wait a minute, you're saying that this blood test showed that she's got the baby's going to have Downs, but you want to do another test. They wanted to do another test to confirm it. Now the blood test it's not invasive, you just take some blood. But the other test they wanted to do was a little bit more invasive and had a real risk of a potential harm to the child. So we were in just a whirlwind of choices and decisions and seeking answers. And we left the doctor's office and we started calling, friends, advisors, mentors, family members, because we were young. We didn't know, had no experience in this. And different people were giving us different advice. Like some people were saying, oh, just have an abortion. What's the big deal? It's just, what's the big deal? And then other people were saying, they all said the same thing. Actually, they all pretty much said that. So we were like, well, but what does that mean? Just like this, a whole new world we'd entered all of a sudden. Like we just like zoomed into a new world. So we went to the bookstore. We went to Barnes and Noble when they used to have Barnes and Noble stores. I don't know if they still have those. And we sat on the floor and we started reading a million books. And then I remember going to the website at that time. It was very, very soon in the whole internet world. And I just plugged into Google Jewish view on Down syndrome, and up popped this article, and it explained that throughout history this has happened, that different babies have been born maybe like without an arm or a leg or some sort of physical or mental disability, yet the Jewish people, they still have the baby and they take care of the baby. And I'm like, oh, I had no idea. And then the Greeks and the Romans would have these babies and they would just leave them out to die, or they would throw them in the lake or the ocean or whatever. And then even recently, in recent history, in the last 75 years, people know obviously the horrible, horrible cruelty of the Holocaust, of what happened to babies. So I said to myself, whoa, this is all new knowledge to me, that new knowledge. And I said, but I'm Jewish, but I don't know anything about Judaism. But if that's what Jews are supposed to do, then I'm going to do it. And just had no knowledge. I just figured that's what you're supposed to do. I'm going to do it. So I went through the next 7 months of the pregnancy, very with like a cloud over my head, scared, not knowing how's my life going to change. And I read all these books and articles about how to take care of a child with Downs, and I'm very career oriented. So I said, I'm going to become the president of the March of Dimes. I'm going to like save the world. I'm going to do whatever I can in this field to help and to save my child and protect my child. And fast forward, I go to the hospital and I have this child, and we're fully expecting my life to change. And the baby came out, and the baby had no Down syndrome. The baby,
The chills.
it was just none, zero Down syndrome. And I was like in total shock. And I mean, I could have not had this child if I had listened to other people, which was just the prevalent wisdom at the time of around me in my circle. So that changed my life. I realized, wow, I have to learn more about Jewish wisdom, Jewish values, as compared to just whatever I see on TV or whatever I, hear from friends. So
Did you, I want to know really how did you feel getting the news that you were going to have a Down syndrome child? And did you seek advice out any other places, other doctors, other friends, people you?
I did. I actually sought out other mothers who had children with Down syndrome, and they were just so special. Like they said, my baby's the sweetest baby ever, and my young man or my young daughter is the sweetest ever. And I met with them. I went to a Shabbat table with a young woman in her 20s who had Down syndrome, and she gave a beautiful little speech at the Shabbat table. She served food. I mean, just the sweetest people ever. And just because they have this tiny little extra chromosome, yet sweet and warm and kind, and the families fully embrace their sibling and child. And I learned that when a person with a disability enters into the synagogue with Down syndrome, the people stand up. They stand up for this person. I'm like, wow, the respect is incredible, because the Jewish view is that we learn from each other, and we're given what we're given to help us grow and change. And I just thought, wow, what a concept, what a holy concept. These other mothers and fathers that I met and talked to and interviewed, I was like, wow, they're the strongest, kindest people that I could ever possibly imagine.
So, I came up with that on my own at some point in my life. I don't remember how or when, but I do remember a family member once looking at a Down syndrome child. Let's say we were at a restaurant or out in public, and they said, "Oh, that poor kid and that poor family." And I responded, I said, "Look at the kid smiling. That boy or girl probably, I don't know for sure, is not going to go through those moody teenage years. They tend to be smiling and happy. And I know there's other issues that go along with it, but there's issues that go along with every child. So I just find it fascinating that friends and physicians hinted or recommended that you should abort a child based on looking at medical device, which was wrong. So
Right.
I wanted to ask you about the Torah view, and then I'm going to tell you a little story about a child I met like this.
Yeah, the medical statistics, we have to be so careful because you can get a false positive. I had a false positive, and we can be very quick and rash to make decisions. And the Torah perspective is that we are souls first. We are a soul, and we live in a body. So there's different viewpoints of exactly when you get your soul. Some people think that you get the soul right at conception. So right at the point of conception, there's a new soul. Okay, and it's come down from the heavenly abode into the woman. Um, and the other perspective of when the soul happens is 40 days later, 40 days later after conception. And then the third viewpoint is when the baby's actually delivered. That's when the soul enters into the child. So no matter how you look at it, whether it's at conception, at 40 days later, or at birth, there's a soul there. And we're all souls. You're a soul, I'm a soul, and we're just happen to be living in this body. And let's say the body is missing an arm, or the body has an illness. We're still a soul, and that means we're still valuable and we're still precious. And the soul can do so many different things, but it needs its body to do those things. So the Jewish perspective, the Torah perspective is that we're a soul first in a body. Now there are rules and guidelines of when you are permitted to have an abortion, and that's when the mother's life is at risk. So, but every single case is very specific. So, like, it's not like you can just go read a book and say, "Oh, I'm going to make this decision." What you need to do when you get news like this is talk to a competent advisor, and a rabbi who's knowledgeable in this area, and really get proper advice, because that's the Torah view. The Torah view is we don't really make decisions the sort of randomly on our own. We look at the 3,000 years of history that exists, and the 3,000 years of many people have gone through this, right? Many people have gone through this, and the Torah view is to know the ramifications is not just on that soul, that little child, but also the ramifications to the mother. So if the mother's life is at risk and she's going to die, then the mother comes first. Absolutely, the mother comes first. And there are other also incidents, situations where an abortion is permitted, but those are on a case by case situation. I'm not a competent person to answer those, but like rape and incest and all kinds of very horrible situations, there are specific guidelines on when it is permitted, but it's not something that you take lightly and just make the decision on your own. You have to have a competent advisor helping you.
Do you want to talk about the Supreme Court decision? Because my small comment is that I saw women very, very upset, crying, having protests, which I understand. Women want freedom over their own bodies. and the decisions went to the state. So it seemed like, well, we can all move to whatever state we believe in. We believe in abortion from birth to 9 months. We can move to that state. If we believe in no abortion, move to some other state. So it was interesting to me that it went to the state instead of the government reigning over the entire country. But what did you think of the decision?
Well, what I thought about the decision was that since the rule was first initiated, I think in the 1970s, early 70s, there have been, I think, 60 million abortions or something like that, some incredible number. Um, and I know in the past, before that rule, before it became legal, there were women who were their life was at risk because they went to like some dark alley to do an abortion, and that's terrible. So when I first heard the rule, I was like, oh my gosh, it's it's like the Torah view. The Torah view is, because if you look at the Supreme Court ruling, it really is if the mother's life is at risk, and in certain situations of rape and incest. So the rule of the land of America has reverted back to more Torah guidelines, which whenever that happens to a nation as a whole, the nation gets blessed, because the nation gets blessed with more good things happening for the nation. When a nation, when the legal system makes decisions that are contrary to the way God wants to run the world, those countries fall, those nations fall. Like if you look at Greece and Rome, not today, those nations are different. I'm talking about the Greece and Rome from 3,000 years ago. Those nations don't exist anymore. And the promiscuity, I'm not making any judgments on values here as far as that's concerned, but the way life was lived 3,000 years ago, with all kinds of promiscuity, and not the family, which is where we started. The family as a central core traditional statement that a mother and a father and children, and that's the traditional family. That's how you perpetuate a healthy society. And when the nation when the laws of the nation reflect that morality, then the land is blessed. It says right in the Torah that the land is blessed, the people are blessed, the government is blessed when it follows. And the Jewish people, our role is to bring morality to the world, so that, and it falls in this category. So I was glad when it came out. It was scary and confusing, but I was glad that the rule came out this way.
So we're talking about life and death decisions. So I want to show your website, Peaceful Return, and explain it. But first, just for fun, let's show Robin's family. Here she is. Can you explain a little bit about your family?
Yeah, so for a woman who didn't want any kids and said, you're just marrying me for my uterus. Look what happened.
What happened?
So, so there's me in a little white, and my husband to my left. And then I have 5 children, thank God. I have 3 girls and 2 boys. And then I have a son-in-law now who's in the gray suit behind me. Yeah, that's my son-in-law. And then I have, in this picture, there's 2 little grandkids, but I actually have 3 little grandsons now. So wow, I went from 0 to all of these wonderful people in my life. So my oldest is 25, my daughter, Raina, and she lives in Sydney, Australia. And then my son, who I was telling you about, is Rory. There he is. He's 21. Look at him.
Miracle boy.
Here's my miracle boy. And then I have a 19-year-old, and I have a almost 17-year-old, and then I have my little guy. There he is, Azriel. He's 10, and that's a whole nother miracle story. And then I have these 3 little grandsons. In the picture here are 2, but yeah, that's my family.
I think I'll go to Peaceful Return since we're talking about life and death decisions. What is Peaceful Return, and what's the Torah view on how we return back to earth?
So it's so interesting because just like we were talking about having a baby, like the womb in Hebrew is rachem. It's related to the Hebrew word of rachem. And that word is actually related to the Hebrew word for like tomb or burial, which is kever. So you get buried in a kever, right? And so womb and kever, they're related. So when you die, you're not like, it's not the end, it's not finality, you're just getting placed into a kever, which is like the womb, which is the earth, and then you're going on to the next world. So what I've done over the last 11 or so years is I've helped people have proper Jewish burials so that they can be gently, lovingly taken care of and placed into that sort of quote unquote womb in the earth and go on their journey to the afterlife. And I mean, I even had two cases this week where people got buried, and they weren't going to be buried, and we were able to help them have a proper Jewish burial. And there's so many miracle stories that have happened as a result of this. You know, people have more peace, they have more closure. It's just better for the environment, it's better for their family. And many miracles about reincarnation, and that's a whole nother topic.
Hmm.
um, but I help people. I'm on call 24/6 to help people have proper Jewish burials, and I've written many books about it, and I have a website, and I give talks all over the world about it.
I'd like to show Robin's books as well, but I want to remind everyone, if you subscribe to my channel, it's Growth Factor, and hit the little bell, you'll be alerted for more incredible stories like Robin's. But if you just click at the top of my channel, it says videos, it'll list all the videos, and you'll find Robin. Look up Robin's Synchronicities, where she shares some of these wild stories that have happened to her. One's regarding a golf ball. It's just amazing. But regarding reincarnation, I know some people of the Christian faith are very uncomfortable. So sometimes people call it soul memory. And sometimes they're taught it's very evil. Hush, hush, can't talk about it. I mean, I've even been ostracized sometimes for just bringing it up in some Christian groups. So if you're uncomfortable, just know that it's not evil. We don't know why children are talking about these things, but you can also look in the videos. My friend Kathy Bird, she lives in California. She's a realtor, and her son talks about the life of Lou Gehrig since he could speak. So we can't understand it in this world, but it's not evil. There's nothing wrong with these children. They have this information, and let's just call it soul memory. But let's get into one of your books, and we'll talk about the other ones.
So this book is called A Sun Returns, and you can get it on Amazon. And it's just it started out as a journal, like a diary, because I had all these wild and crazy experiences happening to me, and I wrote them down. And then after a while, I had so many that a girlfriend said, you just need to publish them, all these stories, because they can help other people see the synchronicities in their own life, and see the coincidences. And there is no actual Jewish word for coincidence. It's hashgacha pratis, which means divine intervention. So there's a higher being or higher energy or God, whatever you want to call it, that is directing and guiding us in our life, and we can feel comfort in that. And so this book is a series of short stories about these kinds of things.
I'm going to go over a few more of Robin's books, but right after that, I'd like to go over, because Robin has a phone call next. I'll tell you why she has so many phone calls every day. First of all, she hosts people in her home. Second, she does Hever Kadisha. We'll talk about that, where she's with bodies that have moved on. The soul has moved on. She sits with the deceased body and does prayer. She'll explain that in a moment. And then also a peaceful return. If you need any help burying someone, either helping them not be cremated, because cremation is putting your loved one in an oven. And now, one quick thing I want to say about that: when your child's little gerbil or pet little lizard or whatever passes, you don't say, hey, let's go burn it in the backyard. Typically, you'll put it in a little shoebox, you'll dig it up, and you'll put it in the dirt, because you understand that that's peaceful. So that's what Robin's website is all about. She explains all the myths about burial, but she also helps people. So if you go to Peaceful Return or share it, you can help people get buried instead of cremated. But here's her other books, and we'll talk about her Hever Kadisha work in a moment. Can you tell us about these books?
Yeah, sure. It's so interesting if you think about it, because we started talking about my son, and how the sort of prevalent advice was just to abort the child. When you get a contract that says you're going to have an abortion procedure, a lot of people do not read the fine print because they don't want to. It's disgusting. They really don't want to. Like, limbs are cut and chopped, and then the body parts are sucked out and thrown in the garbage. Now, it's so interesting because that contract is required by law that the mother reads it. Now, at the end of life, if people choose cremation, there's also a contract, and it says like 10, 12 pages, and it says it there, it says the actual details of what happens in a cremation. Your body's going to be put in an oven, it's going to be burning, and the organs are going to explode, and the bones are going to be crushed with a hammer, kind of a situation, and there's going to be only dust left, no DNA whatsoever. So it's fascinating because here we have two contracts, the beginning of life and the end of life. People don't want to read it because they don't want to face it. And but if you face it and you realize that's not kind, that's not gentle, that's not beautiful. We love life, we love people, we're a soul in this body. And so why would we chop up a body? Why would we burn a body? Why would we do that? It just doesn't make any common sense. So I help people understand that and help them have closure with proper burials. And it's the cycle of life. It's this, we're born, and we're a soul, and then we move on. It's like a butterfly. A butterfly changes like a caterpillar, then a butterfly goes in a cocoon and then becomes a butterfly. It's the same. We're a soul and we change. We go through different phases.
An interesting myth that Robin helped me with. And by the way, she's available for lectures, seminars. She goes all over the country and the world. So if you need her, we can talk about how you can reach out to her. But you could see I showed you her websites, and I'll show you another one. What I want to say, a myth that she taught me is one of my family members explained that they're going to be cremating my family member. It's 3 people they're going to burn. And they told me it's because we're running out of earth. We're running out of land. It's not fair to bury. And the weird thing was, when I was driving up north to visit them, coincidentally, I was looking around thinking, there's so much land. I just, you personally, anyone listening to this, just drive anywhere outside your town for an hour, 3 hours. There is so much land. And I don't know the statistics, probably Robin does, but I think it would take 10,000 more years to use up 1% of the land for burying bodies. It's just such, there's so many myths about cremation. And one of my friends does cremation. So we talk about it. He's aware Jewish people don't cremate. He's aware it's so toxic. He taught me that cremation factories can't be anywhere near neighborhoods and schools because it's so toxic. In addition, you never heard of anyone saying, I would like the ashes of people because I'm going to plant some tomatoes. People think, oh, it's good for the earth. It's good for water. It's not good to throw into the water. It's not good to put in the earth. So it's very interesting. There's so many myths about cremation.
Yeah, during COVID, when we lost so many loved ones, so many people, just so unnecessarily, just terrible, terrible. The crematoriums in Los Angeles were actually shut down because there was too much pollution being spewed into the air. You can Google it. So when people think, oh, it's just better for the earth to do a cremation, it's wrong. There's so much misinformation online, and so you want to get the truth, you want to get the source, and really question the marketing machines out there that are trying to convince you to do things that just don't sit right. I want to this book, Cremation or Burial, the green one with the tree, that goes through all the myths that people question about money, about the environment, about traditional views. Remember My Soul is by my good friend Lori Palatnik, and it's all about the wonderful things you can do when someone passes away. And these are all little brochures. They're very little pamphlets that help explain why burial is better for the earth and for people, and the customs. One of the things that we do, just like when a baby is born, right? When my little son Rory was born, what do the nurses do? They gently wash the little baby, right? And they weigh the baby, and then they wrap the baby in a little blankie. Well, it's the same thing we do at the end of life. We gently wash the person who's passed away. These are our Jewish customs. Then we gently wrap up the person in white clothes, and then we place them in the earth, just like Mother Earth and mother receiving her baby. So these books and brochures, they explain all that. They explain what you can do for the soul after it passes away. So for example, when the body's gone, you can still maintain a relationship with the soul by doing good deeds. You can still do good deeds and maintain a relationship. So a lot of times people will give charity dollars to to support a loved one, and give memory to them, or they'll dedicate a building or anything, and just do good deeds, speak nicely in memory of someone, and those are all special things that help the soul. And these are ways we should act anyway, right? We should do good deeds and speak nicely, and it's all better for the soul to do that. And I coach people, I help them have better lives, in this world, right? In this world, we want to be happy. That's our goal, to have vitality and good health. So I coach people on how to make plans and how to implement their plans in this world. That's what I do, for like my profession, and all the volunteer work and it happens with the end of life coaching and counseling there. So it's just, there's so much good that happens in the world there, and so we just want to be careful not to we want to have good advisors, and check our facts and check what you read, because I actually saw a television show about, that was actually three women who were botched abortions. They were living grown-up women, and they were left on the side as babies. They were aborted. You can Google it probably. They were aborted children, babies, but they grew up. And they grew up. I mean, they have obviously some scars, big time emotionally and physically. But here you're watching this, and you're watching this show, and you're like, oh my gosh, those are real people. And they were just left in 2022. Do we do that? How can that be? How could that be?
So we talked about Hever Kadisha. I'm going to do a screen share and show your website. Can you tell us how people can reach out to you? And also, what does Hever Kadisha mean? What do you do?
Sure. So Hever means the burial society, or the holy society. It means the holy society, and it's volunteer men and women who help families when their loved one has passed away with getting their bodies prepared for burial. And this is my website, where people can reach out to me, they can get a download of a free book that I have, and I give these little classes on how not to waste your life, so that you can have more joy and happiness, and do one-on-one coaching with me. So yeah, I'm available online. This other book called Mitos Miracles, I've written several different books. This one is an anthology. It's a bunch of short stories of amazing people. Amalia, you're actually in there. People who transcend their characters. Let's say it's really, really hard to do something, whether it's anger management or patience or losing weight, whatever it is. People tell their stories of how they transcend and overcome and persisted and overcame and had a character trait miracle. Mitos means character trait. So, and these are very inspiring true stories about rising above our natures.
And Hever Kadisha, what do you do? What does that mean?
So Hever means burial society. It means taking care of someone who's passed away and giving them a proper Jewish burial. And so I help people from beginning of life till the end of life, and have a good life, and be buried properly. And if anybody has a crisis situation, I'm on call 24/6 on my cell phone, 602-469-1606. And I get calls from lay people, and also from clergy who need help, and they need help convincing a family, or maybe they need funds, or maybe they just don't understand the process, and everybody's like emotional and scared and upset. So I calmly walk them through the process, hold their hand virtually, and help them get closure and have a proper burial or any other thing that they need.
Well, I don't want to keep Robin from her good work. She has a call in just a few minutes because she's helping people all day long. I've actually stayed at her house. That's how generous she is. When we first met, she invited me and my family to her home, and we stayed in Arizona for about a week. Just want to thank you for that again, Robin. But if you want to reach out to Robin, I'll put everything in the description. And I'd like to do another interview with you where we talk about cremation or burial. Does that sound good?
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you everyone for being here, and I hope you enjoyed Robin.
Bye.